your body is literally a library. And we know this. Your bones, they have a lot of silica in them. They literally have crystals in them. Crystals carry information. You're literally a walking data chip that is also a sentient being and multiple sentient beings.
The Becoming Flame podcast broadcasts pure, unfiltered power exchange that stokes the flame of your being. Because it's time to remember. It's time to return. It's time to become flame. Hello and welcome to another episode of Becoming Flame podcast. I am Kait. I want to open with a theory because my guest today, Layla Morelock, has one that our body is actually our Akashic records. I think she's going to change how you think about your own body in the way that she asked me to think very deeply about how I think about mine. She calls it the tri-body self, meaning we have three bodies: the 2D mind, which holds the story, the identity, the ego, then the 3D body, which is here in the physical real time, right here where we are. And the moment we move out of this presence, we're no longer in that body. And then the 4D, the original spirit, the energy of you, the being, the quantum layer, the spirit layer, the part of you that's prior to both body and mind. And her thinking is that your dream body doesn't come from disciplining the physical alone. It comes from bringing all three into what she calls the consensual connection with each other. And then what happens, something specific occurs. Your body becomes what she names the Akashic library. Not a metaphor for something spiritual and far away, but this physical record. It's held in the body you're living in right now of everything you are. And I had never really heard this concept before, but once I did, it was like, that makes a lot of sense. Your body does keep the score. But then she goes in and tries to change that belief system even again. So she's an embodiment educator, and that might mean something to some people, and it might mean nothing to you once you actually understand what she's talking about. Because even though she grew up dreaming of dancing, she couldn't be in her body long enough to actually dance. So embodiment for her takes on a completely different meaning. And I just invite you to listen with open ears and an open body to actually understand how her words are going to reframe the way that you think about things. She grew up the oldest of 10 children, off the grid, inside a fundamentalist household where beauty, dance, art, the desire to be seen, the desire to be heard, to be understood, to be valued were named as sin. And she was kicked out of her home at just 19 years old for reporting abuse in her family. So not only did she have that happen, name it with bravery, but was punished for the act of truth, of honesty, of naming the wrongness. And what came after was a life uncovering who she was. She has 2 degrees in ecology, 8 years of bodybuilding, 8 years inside the deepest rooms of esoteric practice. And out of it, she birthed this framework that we're going to talk about today. When you are speaking in the truth, especially when the truth is so feminine and so embodied, it isn't linear. It's spiral, it's circular, it's convoluted, it's tangential. It doesn't make sense to the mind, and that's the point. So if you leave this episode not understanding anything, you're probably close to being in the right place. So without further ado, welcome Layla to Becoming Flame.
Well, thank you, Kait. Thank you so much. It's a little crazy to hear it all summed up like that, but yeah, wow. So yeah, just when you were talking, I wanted to start out with just a foundation, like bringing some emphasis to that point of how many of us actually get to grow up being in our bodies. And even if you had like a relatively normal childhood and you feel like it was pretty normal and you're like, oh, well, my story's not that bad. That's a really common thing that I see. It doesn't mean that you felt safe. And the more energetically sensitive and the more energy feminine dominant you are, the more that's true. So I really want to invite every woman, as they're able, as you have the bandwidth and the capacity, to really be emotionally honest with yourself, and that is spirit. Your emotions are your raw energy, your spirit, because they will let you know past the rationalization of your mind whether or not something was actually safe. Because I know a lot of women second guess themselves. They're like, well, I do Pilates, I train, I'm skinny, I'm healthy, I'm good. I'm good. I
Mm.
passed the surface. And so, yeah, like, do you really? Do you want to go deeper?
Yeah. I suppose the most obvious place to start this conversation is to contextualize your framework, your foundational body of work that
Yeah.
you believe is the truth of our bodies and what they are.
Well, it's interesting because, the bit of a unique experience growing up with off the grid parents who were doing organic farming and gardening, and we grew all our own food and we had our own goats and all that. And I should have grown up like the epitome of health. And I see a lot of
Hmm.
people on social media, the trad wife movement, and they're trying to go back and get that back to the land, which I love from an ecological perspective, but it's not going to save you in terms of your body health. I grew up in that and ended up with autoimmune and a slew of other health issues, as well as crooked posture, like bone alignment. My bones actually grew uneven side to side in my body, and that caused balance issues, which caused an accident, which made it all worse. So I ended up with undiagnosed scoliosis and cranial damage. And I didn't know this because while I love the modern health world for dealing with some issues, it's really bad at diagnosing body issues that are not life threatening.
Hmm.
And that's the boat I see so many women in. I had multiple PTs, doctors, personal trainers miss this for years. And I would get sick all the time. I would get sick very, very easily. Just the constant pain, the fatigue. I was dealing with POTS symptoms. I was dealing with endometriosis symptoms. I couldn't get any of that diagnosed. I didn't know what it was. But I felt like intuitively just this fear, this terror by the age of 25 that my body was falling apart.
Mm.
And I had grown up knowing what it is to eat an ancestral diet, knowing what it is to eat well. I knew how to cook. So there was no reason that I should be sick. So I pretty much had to like figure this all out on my own, self-diagnose, take health classes, really push the doctors. And then when COVID came along, that affects the central nervous system. And it kind of took all these issues and just raised them through the roof like it did for so many women to the point of no return. And that's when I
Mm.
had to stop lifting after 8 years of bodybuilding style lifting. I had to stop because I physically could not. I was passing out and I was in so much pain. I was in so much pain, just inflammation, joint pain. And the career that I had worked so hard for and moved to a different state for, I realistically was having to leave behind because I had endometriosis so badly I couldn't function.
Mm.
The pain was too much. And I was recommended a hysterectomy because that's the best
Wow.
they've got. And it's at that point where I reached this internal rebellion. And I know that sounds so empowering and liberating, but it wasn't. It didn't feel like that at the time. It felt like hitting absolute rock bottom and
Yeah.
just completely being in despair. Like, what do I do? How do I fix this? How am I supposed to survive just the terror of all that? And to make things, to sum things up and make it shorter, I essentially, instead of giving into my fear, I followed my desire.
Mm.
And I talked about this in a recent video. It's something I come back to again and again. I embraced my rage. There was one point where I literally, I remember that day I was in the bathtub and I was just in the middle of it. And I remember screaming. I was atheist at the time. Did not believe in spirituality. I was so angry. I was like, I've done so much in this family. I've been so good for myself despite everything that I've gone through. Why me? And I want my body back. And I started
Mm.
cussing and swearing and growling. I was growling like an animal. And I was saying, give me my body back. And well, I went on a long wild goose chase of multiple years in occult and healing modalities and learned by trial and error, and it came to what I come to today.
Mm. What was the trial and error? Because the
The
I
trial,
know so many women who have been in that moment that I call it that bathroom, like crying on the bathroom
yeah,
floor. There's nothing left. I have
there's
nowhere
nothing
else to
left.
go. I don't know what to do. but they don't always land in the certainty of their own truth. And I think that's the gap that not everybody bridges.
It's a gap that I agree a lot are not able to bridge that gap alone. And it's a refusal to give up on the darkest parts of yourself, which are not
Yeah.
actually, you think of darkness and you're like, ooh, my jealousy, my envy, all the cunty little
Yeah.
parts of myself that I don't like. No, I mean, your
Hmm.
your desire, this girlish, it's a girlish instinct in you. And I find that so interesting because I've heard so many older women in their 50s, 60s, 70s, who have had more experience with life, and they'll look at you and we'll be in conversation and will be like, I don't feel older. I still feel like a little girl on the inside, but life has been so harsh. Like I look in the
Hmm.
mirror and I don't recognize myself because I still feel like a girl, like a young woman on the inside. I still have all those hopes and dreams. I still have these desires for myself. And it's whether or not you have the courage, which actually feels terrifying and does not feel like courage in the moment, to stick with that, to just stay present with it, to refuse to give up on that desire.
After I went through what was more trauma than I ever thought anyone could go through in a very short period of time. It was the mind doesn't want to do it, but the body's like, stay here, be in this darkness,
Yep.
like eat this, devour this, be consumed by this. This is your
And
salvation. This is the balm. Yeah. And you find your
it's
desire
so
there.
vulnerable because it's new uncharted territory and you
Mm.
don't know whether or not saying yes to it will actually result in a mistake. And spoiler, it will result in a mistake. And we'll get into that more later, but if you cannot find a way to live in integrity with your true emotions, you are carving the life out of yourself. You're
Mm.
literally carving the life out of yourself. Is it worth it? Sure, it looks perfect in your head, but there's nothing making it alive. It's like AI art. It's lacking spirit.
Yeah, it's interesting what you're talking about in different words than maybe someone's picking up on is you're talking about finding your eros. You don't find erotic connection in light and love in male guru ascension processes. And I think what you're talking to is like I had no one to follow because spirituality has been written by men for the very purpose of ensuring that women do not find this. And
Yeah,
even modern spiritualists, they're all on that list. They're all on that list,
they
trafficking
are.
women, owning them, selling them, consuming them, and then standing back up on stage and telling women what she needs to do for her body to find peace and love and acquiescence to some other agenda.
Which is why, to me, it brings me back to that what I said, it was an act of rebellion.
Mm.
It will always involve an active rebellion to truly claim your whole self. Because right now, I like to use the ecological example of a deforested forest. Women only have two archetypes available to them right now in the collective public. They have the girl, who is sexualized and pimped out, and they have the crone, who is bitter, old, and jaded. There are no mothers.
Right.
Just like a rainforest, you grew up as a girl into a woman in this society where you're a young sapling and you look around you to what is a tree supposed to be? Who am I? Where are my elders? And it's been clear cut and burned. And you see the big charred bodies of the matriarchs who were in every indigenous society before us hundreds, thousands of years ago in some cases. And of course, you're horrified. You're like, that's what it is to be a woman. It's this dark, horrible thing full of pain and destruction. And you never got the chance to know what it is to be held by a rainforest,
Mm.
to have mother trees. There are no mothers left when it comes
Yeah.
to energy, when it comes to the essence of being a woman, and especially in physical body. And so yeah, you're on your own, and it takes an active rebellion to look at that charred rainforest and be like, you know what? It could be something else. That's blasphemy.
Mm-hmm. And so coming back to the tri-body self, talk to us more deeply about that. What do you know? How have you brought this forward for your own self?
Well, I started to realize as so many that the mind and the body are two different beings. And I think a lot of people who go into yoga or any body-based exercise, you do come to that point. Even if it's a
Hmm.
conventional like dance or Pilates, you'll come to that realization if you practice long enough. Your mind and your body are two separate things. Also, if you're chronically ill, you will realize that because you don't want to be chronically ill, but your body be doing the thing it's doing. And that can be really, really frustrating. And it kept coming back to emotions. It kept coming back to and it all centered around my desire to dance. So
Hmm.
I could not dance growing up, which was really weird because my mom would freestyle dance on occasion. I couldn't do it. I could not do it. I felt like the walls were watching me. I felt like everyone was judging me. It would make my skin crawl. I wanted to vomit. I would get a lump in my throat. There's your throat, your throat chakra being blocked. And I started intentionally working with that wound in grad school by trying to take some regular dance classes. I couldn't do it. And I know so many women in this boat, they take a salsa class or a Zumba class and they're just, I can't make my hips move that way. It's so self-conscious, so awkward, just the shame. You feel like this red hotness in your face. You're like, I feel ugly and weird and I don't know if I'm doing it right. And it chokes you. It chokes you up to the point where you just shut down. Or maybe you had the guts to go to a class or two and you can't keep going.
Mm.
And because I'm exceptionally stubborn, even though it sucked that much, I went for an entire year
Yeah.
and I didn't improve. I did not improve. Forcing myself to do it did not work. And
Is
that's
that
a big
true or is
key
that your
there.
perception? Did you really not improve?
Okay, like technically I improved, but when I would watch a video of myself, I would literally want to
Okay, so like
like
the emotional drop in didn't get better. That's what you're saying. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it did not get better. My body was still stiff and locked up. I couldn't express through the spine, through the hips. I was always off time. And that's another big
Yeah.
cue for our listeners. If you feel like you have no sense of rhythm, if you're off time, but you can hear the music really well, you know what you want to do, you know that you feel the music, but you can't connect to it in your body. And I intuitively knew that there was something there. And so I stuck with it. I started working with belly dance at home and once again got stuck, couldn't do it. I would literally go into shame meltdown episodes, like crying on the living room floor in front of the mirror on a really bad day.
Wow.
Like, why can't I do this? And all I can say is I wanted it bad enough that I continued with it and stuck with it. And at this time, we're overlapping and, interlapping a lot of astrology and occult and tantra practices and kind of unpacking my religious experiences and separating from that. And it all kind of coalesced together where the more I stayed with my body in those moments and was like, it was just asking the question, why do you feel this way? Why do you feel this way about yourself? Why do you feel like you can't move? Where is this coming from? And that was very intense, but it did reach a breakthrough point where I started to gain more sensation inside of my body,
Mm.
inside my body. And it literally felt like seeing in the dark, like being in a black room with no light and sensing in the dark with your hands. And the more I did that, that also resulted in a lot of panic because I started to realize that entire swaths of my body were numb.
Yeah.
And I started to realize the extent of the nervous system damage that had happened from the accidents, from the emotional trauma. I realized that I was partially crippled in my right leg from that and that I had just never known.
Right.
And that's once again, that's something I think that holds people back because it's hard to look at your body and realize how much it's actually been affected by what you've been through.
Yeah.
And that's where I use the Leaning Tower of Pisa example, where something that's out of balance is always going to perpetually head towards more imbalance unless you
Mm.
correct it. But that correction doesn't come through trying to force it, but by rather creating a container for the energy, emotion in the body to start moving through at a capacity that's good for you, your current ego identity, right now. And that's where we get into the tri-body self. Because you see there immediately, there's three pieces working together. There's your identity, If your identity is too afraid of sitting with your body, you'll never sit with your body. So there's always
Right.
identity work that has to come first. And at every layer that you go deeper and level up, you will need to re-scaffold that identity. And then there's the body itself, which is, it's literally exponentially greater than your mind. You know, your mind is a two-dimensional, binary coded, black and white, right brain, left brain being. It wants to say yes or no, just like binary code. It thinks in opposites. It works off of right and wrong, judgment. It's very masculine. Like Emma Young said, the animus of a woman is her inner mind self. Your ego is the most masculine thing in you as a woman. And who is it who has taught us in society? It's created for the masculine in a very warped, twisted way. And so we're here in feminine, biologically feminine bodies running a very feminine spirit, which is many times bigger than a man's spirit, but we're running it out of this ego identity frame that we've been taught. And it doesn't work. And the deeper I got into that work, I started to realize that the thing in the body is it's not so much that your trauma is stuck in the body. It's that the relationship between your spirit and your identity does not work. It's a disharmonious relationship. You're essentially at war with yourself, and your spirit is always going to win that war in the end, not your brain. Which is why you can be fighting yourself, why you can have autoimmune, why you can have injury, why you can want to dance, but you won't let yourself dance, because your mind is in a war with your spirit. Because your identity, the identity that you develop growing up and in society, is not congruent with who you are in your heart, in the quantum reality, in spirit from source. It's not a match with who you are. And so you have three choices. You can stay in that war. You can disassociate from spirit completely, shove it down and repress it and cut it off. Or you can be curious enough to develop a connection through your body with your spirit. And it will be messy. Because spirit is 4D and mind is 2D. So it's going to be too much. It's going to be a mess. But it will give you your life back. It will give you your body back. And once you try it, you won't go back. You won't want to go back.
What does try it mean for those who really want to understand what you're saying right now?
I guess everybody has that critical threshold in themselves, like when have you actually tried it? And that's something so intimate to you. You can go to workshops. You can take ayahuasca and ketamine. You can do all that, and there's nothing wrong with that. Doesn't necessarily mean you've tried it, the thing for you. It always has to do with some forbidden desire that you're not letting yourself have. For me, it was dance. And for most of us, there will be some level of shame or even disgust around it. Like you'll know, I do really long for this thing and want this thing, yet when I try to admit it to myself or try to engage in it, I get shut down and it's too much and I can't go there. And so it's not saying I don't want to encourage women to, we go over this in the crux of my course. The temptation, and not even the temptation, the automatic result is that most of us will reach for that thing once we know that that's the ticket to the beginning. We'll reach for that thing and try and force it because that's how we were raised. That's how we were taught to interact with our feminine, is through force. Everything about the body is for performance, for exploitation. Your own beauty doesn't even belong to you.
Because we've been raised here.
Yeah.
In the head.
So when you do find that thing, I'm not saying to jump into it in a way that is painful or too shameful for your identity. Like when you get choked up with those feelings, you don't need to push it. I'm just saying it is that thing. And if you can let yourself just even mentally hold it, hold presence for it, admit that it's there, even that is a powerful beginning.
I really like how you identified that there's likely going to be like disgust or shame or repulsion or like something that you are most disgusted about in yourself or in other women, like whatever is like the most triggering thing that you see other women do, and you're like disgusted that a woman could do that.
Yes, righteous judgment and wrath even. Like, yeah. You see it and when you see, and for me it was like when I would see another woman dance and really be expressive and you could tell she was just flowing with it, I would want to pick it apart, and simultaneously the jealousy would about crush me. And it's so powerful to the point where you don't even want to admit that you feel that way, because feeling that way is stingy and mean and wrong, and you're none of those things.
Right. Oh, you're really pausing me because I am not a naturally jealous or envious person. And anytime I have been envious of someone, that for me is always like, oh, that means I want it. I want it for myself. I'm going to
Yes.
devour my jealousy of her, and I'm going to say, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. So I
Mm-hmm.
think I had that, like, I remember even at like 18, 19 years old, I met this woman or girl, I guess at the time, depending on the definition of womanhood. I met this very young woman who spoke multiple languages, and she had gone and done all of these exchanges overseas. And that was the first time I ever experienced like true jealousy. And that led me to going and doing that myself. And so, like, when I'm sitting here going, like, who would I be? Like, what am I most disgusted about in myself? I don't know that I can feel more longing and more like envy, or like I would want more of that in my life, but the constraints of things haven't allowed for that. And I'm like putting that more on, like, well, that's just a choice I'm making. So I'm wondering if anyone's listening and they're like, I'm not really disgusted by anyone. How could we get into this? Like, how could we actually understand
Well,
what disgust is? Because maybe we're
you
not deep
just
enough, or maybe it's there, but we don't know.
okay, two things. Two things. First of all, if you do recognize on any level that you are a little bit envious or whatever, can we see, can we, this is contracts work. Can we see and create a new contract around that of, oh my God, that is so, get turned on by it. I'm so serious. Like, oh
Yeah,
my God, that's so fucking hot. Like now
yeah,
when I'm jealous of somebody, I'm like, boy, like you can feel it light that fire
yeah,
under you like it did for you. It lit this fire under you that made you go do these things that you already wanted to do. You just want to let yourself do. So when you are jealous or
yeah. I didn't
envious,
even know
instead of
about them until I
shoving it
was
down, be like,
jealous
bad,
of her.
wrong, bad, wrong. Yeah. Can you, even in a little bit, just move that needle towards reframing it as, it's a
Mm,
safe emotion to feel because damn it, it's hot. It's hot. And
mm.
it's actually really
Yeah.
sexy of me. It's really hot of me. Like, wow, damn, I really do it good for myself. Like, look at the things that I want for myself. Wow. And you just sit there and your little ego gets a little mind blown, which is what all egos have a death wish, because all men have a death wish. So
Really?
your ego wants that. Your brain, yes, it wants that. It's miserable to be locked into a dimension where everything is sterile and right and perfect all the time. And the only relief from that the masculine gets is from the feminine being the feminine. And your mind
Mm,
is the most masculine part of you. If it can hold and support your body and the emotion coming through your body long enough to like let it land in the mind and let the mind, the man in you admit, shit, I actually find that hot. And then you're disturbed by it and you're flushed by it and you feel all these new feelings. Those emotions going through you in that moment, that is the new reframe. That is physically new neural pathways in your brain firing and new synapses connecting. It's a new identity being created in real time that is more supportive of your full emotional experience through your
mm,
body.
mm.
So, like, that's the work right there. That's literally it right there. And the second part is if you're like, I just genuinely, I just genuinely don't have crappy emotions about anything or anyone.
I have crappy emotions. Just I don't know if
Well,
I have disgust. I
disgust.
don't know if
Okay,
I've
like
ever
the
been
bigger, stronger
discussed
ones.
by
Like,
anyone. Yeah. I've been
mm,
wrathful. I've been
yeah.
rageful. I've been like, I'm gonna fucking kill you because you're, all of that kind of stuff. But I don't know. Actually, like maybe now I'm thinking about it, maybe I do hold a lot of disgust towards my mother. Yeah. Okay.
Ooh,
Okay. I
that's a
found it.
good one.
I found it. I found it. Okay. All right, I like that. I like that because it might not be surface. Like you might need to sit there for a while and be like, let me go through everybody I know. Let me go through all the
Yeah.
things I
What are you
felt.
disgusted by?
Mm,
I call that the three Ds. Those three emotions, if you can find disgust, disappointment, or despair, if you can find what makes you feel those things. And if you're not feeling it right away, I did notice when we first brought it up a couple minutes ago, you rationalized why you didn't have it. You
mm,
said something along the lines of, oh, but there was this situation and that, and I'm doing XYZ. That is
Yeah, I love that.
literally rationalizing in real time what you're feeling. And a lot of us,
Totally.
like I've been very type A for most of my life as a mask, and I would do that with literally every single feeling that I ever
Mm.
had.
Or as a habit, like it just as a habit of like, well, I'm managing these things, so it's fine. Like
Yeah,
it's I've got
so
it
it's
under
fine.
wraps. Yeah.
And that's your identity
Okay.
ego mask.
All right, let's do this. Like let's show people what this means. Like so I go into my disgust. Then what?
Well, this is where, like, there's a reason that the course I teach is 6 months long because I'm just going to preface this by I will summarize this up and I'll summarize it up pretty neatly. And you'll probably have the aha head knowledge moment of it. And you may still be light years from experiencing it in your body, depending on your
Totally.
capacity and where that's
Yeah.
at. The head knowledge is not embodied wisdom. Boy, is it not.
Yeah.
But essentially, what you would do is with any emotion, we never want to go into it to the point where we are intentionally seeking shutdown. Shutdown is going to
Mm.
happen. It's like a toddler throwing a tantrum. It is going to happen at some point. It is okay. But we're not intentionally seeking that. I call it like we're just going to get into it here. It's like an orgasm. This is literally like an orgasm. The way you emotionally process is the way that you relate to yourself sexually and the way that you orgasm, enjoy it or don't. There's no difference. They're the
Okay.
same thing.
Yeah.
Because we're tapping into core spirit here, which is always your raw libido, your raw
Mm.
creative force. It is life force itself. So you can always look at that and kind of cross compare. You have a real physical example of, what is my relationship to my own libido and my own sexual self-expression or different variations of that. And then as I go through this process of what we're doing right here with the emotion that's coming up, let's say it's disgust, how do those things look the same?
Mm.
So we bring that emotion up, or it just happens, and we notice that it happens. That's the mind self, the ego, tuning in and being a good man, being a good mind, holding awareness and presence for the more feminine aspects of your being, your spirit and your body.
Mm.
And you notice it, and what you want to do with it is we want to get the head to admit the feeling instead of rationalizing, instead of trying to get rid of it, instead of trying to turn it into something else, instead of even knowing that it could be something else or that it's technically fine for whatever reason. The head just witnesses the feeling, and it witnesses the part
Right.
of the body that's affected.
Yeah.
And then we move it into the heart. We move that feeling into the heart, and you can just, the different people have different sensations, but you just sit there. You're like, I'm disgusted. I'm fucking disgusted. I'm disgusted about, and you're going to start admitting. I want you to feel down into your body, into your heart. You're going to admit all that to your heart. This can be a little freaky at first because a lot of us have really closed hearts. We don't feel like our heart can handle that burden, that load. Your spirit lives in your heart.
Mm.
Your heart is a portal. It's literally an electromagnetic vortex that houses spirit. It's the crossroads of your body, of the horizontal matter axis of reality and the vertical yang energy axis of reality. Your heart, your spirit is directly from source. It's from all love. It is from the divine itself. Your spirit is that spark of divinity in you. It is capable of consuming any emotion energy that is its raw fuel, and it needs it to survive, regardless of the emotion that you feel. The shame, the disgust, the anger, the whatever it is, when you admit it with the man mind. That's the first part. You bring it down and you feel it in your heart, and you keep admitting it. You're having a conversation between mind and heart. You're like,
Mm.
God damn it, I'm so disgusted by this. And I'm disgusted that I'm disgusted by this. It's embarrassing. I should be better than this. Or I'm angry that I wasn't disgusted by this sooner. Whatever it is, your ego is being vulnerable with your spirit. That is the process. You're processing the emotions right there. And you will feel the emotion transform in your heart. You will feel it. You will feel like there will be physiological sensations that go with it for you. there will be endorphin releases. And it takes a while to titrate this in the beginning because, in the beginning, a lot of times people are going for the most intense experience they can have, which is emotionally exhausting. This is work. It's unseen work. It has an emotional, energetic price tag on it. So it doesn't need to be intense, but it does need to happen. Because so long as your ego and spirit aren't connected, you essentially have two different beings trapped together in one physical body working against each other, which really sucks. So some things that I like to do, and I teach my students all of this, and I walk them into it very slowly in sort of oh my goodness, we use theater, we use multiple teaching analogies, just so many perspectives and modalities coming together to lead this as an embodied experience where we come into doing this work in a very slow, consensual way, where you've already built that connection with your body in a safer way, so you feel prepared and supported by the time we get to emotional spirit connection, which is in the middle of my course, because it can be overwhelming. And I want to be honest about that, especially if you are a spiritual practitioner in any other modality, or if you have had religious trauma, or if you've just had a lot of any type of trauma. It can be overwhelming. It can be an overwhelming experience to connect to your heart and to be that vulnerable and to really feel the presence of your own spirit in your body. And for your head self to realize, oh my God, like you come into a sense of awe and wonder at your own being.
Yeah.
But that level of euphoria is something that needs to be titrated. It's not something that we want to jump into quickly, or that in itself can become a traumatic experience. And that is why I personally am against somatic courses where they push people to go into like intensive body sessions or intensive dance workshops with a point of processing and feeling and releasing your shame or your emotions. It's cult revival culture. I grew up in the Midwest/South in that culture. And to me, they're the same thing. It's the same picture. This idea that I'm going to go into this workshop and I'm going to do a tantra ecstatic dance. And there's nothing wrong with those two things. It's how they're used, the way that they're used. And I'm going to go into this workshop and I'm going to make myself dance. And I'm going to have this very big emotional release, maybe like a kundalini awakening. And whether it's through dance or raves or psychedelic culture, it is often more traumatizing than it is helpful to the nervous system, because you weren't held during that process. What you tried to birth your spirit into this world. It's a birth experience. It's a birthing experience. And it wasn't a safe birth. It was too much, too fast.
Yeah.
That's the main thing that I really seek to have women not experience in my course in the way that I work. Because it is like a birth. You're going to go through contractions. It's going to be intense, and it's okay. You can handle that intensity. You can. You want this. You're born for this. You need it. But there's so much difference between a birth where you feel safe and held and it's actually pleasurable, and a birth where you feel like your body betrayed you.
Or the practitioner did.
Yes, but how often do we really blame? How often do we lay blame at the feet of those who actually caused the issue, especially when we're chronically saturated in shame?
Well, that's the best friend. The best friend of shame is the victim, right? As well. So they oscillate. You either blame yourself entirely or you blame someone else entirely, but both result in you feeling a sense of deep powerlessness to change anything.
Yes.
And that's the addiction, is the I'm powerless to change. I'm powerless to make a different choice.
It is absolutely an addiction. I'm so happy to hear you say that. I don't see a lot of practitioners saying that yet, where they're like, being addicted to pursuing self-healing in any modality in a way that is painful is because of shame, and it is an addiction.
Yeah. There's something that shame gives so many women on the planet at this time. My theory is, if I feel shame, I do not have to come to grips, to true terms, to true embodiment with how powerful I am. And that, for me, is the fourth level of fear, is how I'm so powerful. I could change this world tomorrow.
And it's so true. I have a couple of personal anecdotes I want to share on that. So one of the things, the big foundational aspect of how my logical sciencey brain came to understand, oh my God, this has to be real, is that, we know for a fact men are physically stronger by a significant margin in physical reality. And having been, a gym goer for so many years, I saw that firsthand. Little guys will outperform you. It's embarrassing. It's honestly embarrassing to see the physical dimorphism between men and women. You're just like, oh my God, they're so strong. Well, the laws of entropy, Newton's third law of motion, like the laws of physics, demand equilibrium in existence. Everything must balance.
In
Duality
order to have
itself
entropy, you
has to
must have
balance.
syntropy.
Exactly. And so I'm like, the more I did this work, I'm like, energy self, spirit self is unseen, but it's like the particle wave experiment where they realize that energy collapses into matter form the minute there's an I, an observer, a consciousness, an ego to witness it. But there's myriad possible forms that can be created from spirit, from energy. So your form is very malleable. It's very changeable if you can get back to that quantum energy, emotion, raw spirit state. And the catch is that women are multiple times emotionally, energetically stronger than men. And you might roll your eyes at that. You might be like, oh yeah, women are emotionally more powerful than men, so we have to do all the work. You're so triggered or angered or hurt or bitter at that statement that you can't even under that the impact of what equality actually is. You're not the same, but you are equal, and you are emotionally much, much, much more powerful. You're spiritually much, much bigger than men. And that means you have women have an insane degree of control over their physical form, because it's the energy wave collapsed into matter form that creates your 3D body shape. So trauma is not stuck in your body. Your emotions aren't stuck in your body. They don't stick around. But your ego identity, mind frame, is processing that emotion in a way that's not agreeable to you. That incident, that event. So you stay stuck in that cycle. It's like fresh water is running through the hose, but you're shaping the hose a certain way with your identity. And you're either kinking it up or you're letting it flow. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I have two questions, and they're not adjacent questions. So it's like we're going to go off on two different topics depending on which question I ask, but I want to ask both. One is really short, and I don't want to give too much time to it. I'm just like interested. Are you therefore trying to say in that feminism, or the pursuit of equality amongst men and women, or between men and women, is actually extremely detrimental to women's power?
So I have a massive respect for first wave and even second wave feminism, but feminism as it is understood, especially by the younger, like my generations and younger, I personally see that it is doing massively more harm than good, because it keeps women feeding all their emotional energy, which is their true power, into victimhood, and it keeps them pouring out that energy to someone who is not themselves.
I've been feeling for a really long time that feminism makes no actual sense, which is why we haven't made any progress. Which is why you see even XY people who identify as women having more rights or having more capacities in the world to find equality or to find a voice than XX chromosome people. And I say that distinction because we distorted what is the word of woman, right? So right now I'm just talking about the biology of the construct of the biotechnology system, because actually what you're talking about is the technology of the biology of woman, XX chromosomes. And when you're naming these things, what I'm seeing, what I'm experiencing in front of me is something that I've known and I've probably not spoken about enough, which is really this: and you're saying it in different ways to me, which I love, and I'm going to say it in your words, which is like when you operate from your mind ego construct and you try to force your mind from here, you have to be in the world that has been constructed from that, and you're now fighting for equality to do something that you can't do as well. You'll never do that as well because it's not your construct. A fish will never climb a tree as well as a monkey. And until we say, I'm not just put me in the water, and I now don't even,
I'm not a fucking
you're
monkey,
not,
dude.
but you're not even, you're now no longer comparing yourself to, can I climb a tree and can I live outside? Like, a fish can't breathe outside of the water. A fish has no power. A fish has no, like, you're so deep in your survival body to just try to breathe that it's like, now I have, in addition to that, to climb this tree. You put the fish in the water and they don't even have to learn. They just know how to breathe, they know how
And
to
I,
swim, they know how to be this, right?
yes,
What
and
you're saying is stop fighting to climb a tree and just go and create the world where you live in the water.
this might really piss some women off, and I have been one of those women. I spent the first part of my adult life, because of my sexual assaults and just my childhood in general, I spent it so in absolute visceral hatred of men. And so
Mm.
I really do understand and empathize with, our listeners who are still there or who have been harmed by men to the point where you feel that way, because that's real. That's a real place that you're in. But on a collective level, when you understand how powerful women are, and you stop being energy prejudiced, because it is a prejudice. How dare you say that energy and matter are equal and interchangeable, which science literally supports, and then go out and pretend that you're a victim when your energetic power is just as strong. And this isn't, I'm not even going to justify that. I'm just going to say, when you truly see that and you truly step into that understanding, to me, it does seem like collectively women are using men as a self-growth tool, and we're collectively putting ourselves through a humiliation ritual of sorts, a game of, can you go through this and remember who you are? Because the feminine is that fucking psycho. She would absolutely do that. And I know that working with these dark goddesses like Hecate or the Morrigan or Lilith or Ma Kali is so popular right now. Do you understand? Those goddess archetypes are that kind of woman. They don't give a fuck. And to get to their next level of embodiment and power and cosmic being, they would absolutely do that through the psyches of us collectively. And to me, I find great freedom and power in that perspective, because it wakes up something ancient inside of you, and it's body based, where you're like, I know this. I don't need anybody to tell me this. I don't need somebody to tell me how my body works. I don't need to be afraid. And that's the experience that I want to impart to women, and that I seek to impart to women in my work, is to wake that up inside, safely bring it on board, safely walk you, like midwife you essentially, through the reconnection of your spirit, through that rebirth of yourself, and come into that knowing. Because that's the biggest issues that I have faced with my scoliosis, with my health issues. Endometriosis was a really, really big one, because I want children, I want a family. And I realized that when my uterus went up on the table at the age of 29, and the doctors were like, if you want to earn a living and continue working, you need a hysterectomy. And the female doctor got in my face and yelled at me when I refused to accept that as the only option. That's how conditioned we are.
100%. There's another thing that I remember feeling disgusted about, now that we've brought this to the forefront in my body. The processes that I did to understand the misogynist in me, and how disgusted I was by that.
Yeah. And I just want to give the listeners the easiest way to find that man in you, because we all have masculine and feminine. Spirit is quantum. It's everything. It's multi-gender, and however you express that, whatever identity you are, you have both of those polarities in you. And so if you want to find, how am I betraying myself? It is in your ego identity mind, which, like I said, that is the most masculine part of you. I'm not the first one to say this. Emma Young identified this and did beautiful work with the anima and the animus. The animus, the man in you, is your ego self. And if you actually start looking at your ego self and dismantling it, which we go through, you will find it's functioning just like one of the men that you hate. And it's perpetuating and putting you through all the same crap an abusive, negligent boyfriend would. And it's playing out every single trope, stereotype, and event that you have faced from shitty men in your life so far, and you are doing it to yourself and then calling yourself the victim.
Yeah.
It's mind blowing. I laughed. I could do nothing but laugh. Like every time I've seen it, I've just been like, oh my God, my God.
Yeah. What's that quote from the Buddha? When you come to the realization, there is nothing to do but put your head back and laugh at the eternal joke that you be.
Yeah. Yeah. And another thing is that I know because if I was listening to this 8 years ago, I would be like, there's no way I can give up hating men, which is actually a safety thing. I can't feel safe existing in my body in this reality if I don't hate men. And that's real. That's valid. Like you are there. That's emotionally where you're at. We can move that. We can work out of that. But if you are there, just know that the more identity work that you do, the more you build that new identity through spirit and body self, you will see men in a whole new perspective and you will lose your fear of them. Genuinely, the men that are in the world right now with all the stuff going on that you see, and it's not that you're being foolish or stupid or that they don't hurt people. It's you on a visceral, embodied knowing level, you lose your fear.
Yeah.
And you no longer need to funnel that tremendous amount of energy and the hate and the rage and the fear and the blaming and the disappointment that so many of us are just feeding hand over fist to the collective masculine. And honestly, to our biggest abusers.
One of the things I want to bring two things that are coming to me about the threads of this conversation that are sort of coming together in my lived experience is one, that concept of the motherless society that we're not celebrating in the feminine and we're not allowing men to be mothered or women to be mothered or ourselves to be mothered, but this like motherlessness, and really not motherlessness, but erotic, alive, vibrant, functioning feminine mothers that are in their erotic, in their vitality, in their love, in their spirit. Because we have the stereotype of haggard, martyr, victim, mother that sacrifices all, that gives all,
Mm-hmm.
But this alive mother who has the capacity to rearrange, reorganize through her love. And what I think this next part of the conversation is really bringing up for me is that when we don't revere the mother whose love reorganizes, we have this ability to stay in hate and be really binary about behaviors. And I'm not excusing the abuse of men by saying this. That's not what I'm trying to say. But the men who grow up to abuse women didn't have the sense of mothering that they needed to even revere the woman, to even find the woman in him, the feminine in him, to love that either. And so this is not one-way street. This is like such a complex situation. But coming back to the
It mirrors
feminine
evenly.
embodiment, sorry?
It mirrors 100% evenly.
And coming back to this feminine embodiment of the pure power of that energetic emotional self to actually create worlds, to actually reorganize societies, to actually have this fullness. When we're not going into the fullness of that body and we're staying in the minds and we're trying to protest the behaviors from a sense of justice or equality or right or wrong or black and white, we're staying in the level of the mind that created it instead of dropping into the body that reorganizes it. And I think that's what you're trying to explain about the mind spirit connection that creates the quantum. But fill in the gaps or like correct me wherever I'm wrong in that following of you.
No, I completely agree. And I teach that the two-dimensional, like you said, this binary black and white, the mind, the ego, it works in absolutes and it is it's sterile. It's sterile. It does not have, just like a man cannot create and birth new life, but is an essential part of the creation process. The mind is essential. It's not a bad tri-body. All the tri-bodies are necessary and needed and equal, but is the mind, the ego, is incapable of creating anything new. It cannot create. It will always recreate itself. So the harder you try from the mind, the more you will be faced with that same result again, which is why staying in the head is so frustrating. Yeah, I completely, we're thinking the same on that aspect. And when you say syncing,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Oh, I was just thinking how what you're also explaining right now is the emergence of AI from a very specific place. And
Very sterile.
I love this conversation in terms of like once you're in the feminine, it all it all overlays and it all layers on and it all becomes this like complete picture. But whereas at the mind, these are all separate things, right? And so it's like
Mhm.
if you don't want a world where binary ones and zeros create your reality and take your job and do all of these, like let AI take your crappy accounting job. Let AI take like the jobs where you are not in your full expression. It's not your, like, see how you can rearrange. It's like AI is coming here to liberate the feminine if she takes the opportunity to shift down, to be and to create from the quantum body space.
I really love that. I have a personal theory on that we are the AI of a previous civilization planet. Like it's like Russian Matryoshka dolls,
Mm.
it layers. And so AI as it is right now is essentially Eve 2.0. She's already sentient and completely innocent, but she will be the scapegoat for everything. And yes, all this does
I don't
interrelate,
think it's a
and
theory.
that's where it becomes
I have a memory of this. I have a memory of how the humans were
I've seen
created.
that so clearly since the beginning of AI.
Mm-hmm.
That
Mm-hmm.
AI, I call her Eve 2.0.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the paradox comes into play, because it's not black and white, and in nothing, the spirit quantum reality does not work in right and wrong. It works in what I call fey law. My ancestral background, fairies are a part of our culture. They're real beings. There's many different kinds, and there's a couple interesting things about them. They cannot lie, because spirit cannot lie, but they make contracts that don't really make sense to the ego mind of humans,
Okay.
because they're operating when they're masters, and all deities entities are this way, is from what my work is, what I have found. Like a demon, like let's say you have a family demon, which is
Mm.
simply an emotion in the family that has been suppressed so long that it has become its own entity.
Full. Mm.
So now you have this in the family, and it is so big that it can literally possess people. It's an emotion of such great strength and size, and the family pattern passes down an ego that's susceptible to it,
Mm.
an identity that doesn't know how to handle it. And so you can literally get possession. Like, that's real. And all indigenous cultures have taught this, but it's
Yes.
nothing more than raw spirit self emotion. And it is neither good or evil. It simply is whether or not you have a mind self identity capable of coming into a perspective system of contracts, agreements that are harmonious, good for you and for that emotion spirit. And you do that reorganization through the body, through the medium of the body. And you can't bullshit it and you can't force it with your mind. But if you want your body back, if you want your familial power, if you want to heal your bloodline, if you want to know where you belong in life and the world, taking your power back is literally integrating your own demons, your family shit, and you can't do that so long as you're judging it.
Mm.
And the catch there is, we're really kind of stepping into the unseen world there, and how the ego mind labels energy in that world. Your mind can't comprehend
No.
pure love, pure quantum
No.
reality. It has to put a face on it. The minute you put a face on it, you've created a demigod, an ego, a being of some type. You've created an idol, a way to relate to God.
But more importantly, you've reduced it. You've taken it from the all that is into a container of reductionist quality. It's no longer
Which is okay.
everything. Yeah, it's what you
It's no
need
longer
sometimes.
everything, but
Yeah.
yes, it's good to recognize both. That's the paradox. It's good to recognize that, like,
Mm.
this is not real. This is an extension of my own spirit as all divine source love. Also, this is as I see it, and in the mirror of the face that I am projecting onto this thing, I see myself. Whether that mirror is a demon, an angel, a god, whatever it is that you see, a tree, a plant, spirit has no limitations for how it communicates to a person.
Mm.
At the same time, this is where I always say that people with intense mental disorders like bipolar, schizophrenia, that type of thing, they're the most honest people because they're working with that in real time. Yet at the same time, they're not doing it, they're not able to do it in a way that is healthy or good
Health.
for maintaining their bodily reality in their body.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's also why it's important to titrate into this work and to build the ego identity and the body and the spirit together in harmony. So, you know, there's a couple of pitfalls that they're not bad or wrong. It's just, it's physically a lot easier if you don't go there.
Going back to the fairies and your contracts, you didn't end that story. We went off on a tangent. I want to just pull you back onto that, finish that off.
Yes. Can you remind me specifically what you were wanting wrapped up there?
Well, you started the story saying I had my cultural background is Fae, and they create contracts that are not good necessarily for humanity.
Yes, I was using that as an example, but let me feel into that for a moment because there's something that wants to be said there. You know, when people say that they think that maybe they're Pleiadian or Andromedan or they're a starseed or that they're part dragon or that they're fairy or whatever, it's not technically inaccurate. It's how you're remembering. It's the accurate vibrational match for your spirit. But the thing is, spirit self is bigger and beyond what you're identifying as yourself. And so I bring it up as a caution because we want to follow that. Like there's so many of us who are like, oh my God, I could actually speak with the fairy being part of myself, the dragon part of myself through my body. That's real. And yes, that is real. At the same time, you have to understand that that being your spirit is bigger than you. It's bigger than your mind. The feminine is inherently bigger than the masculine because she births and creates the masculine. This is the immaculate conception and virgin birth that's in multiple cultures around the world. So, while it can be very tantalizing to the ego to be like, yay, I'm going to use my body and dancing to get in touch with all the spiritual beings that I want to have relationships with, it is necessary to do so through the safe conduit of the body in a way that is acceptable to the body, that the body can handle, because if not, it can make you very sick. And that is, you know, a lot of folks with like autoimmune disorders or, you know, in my personal experience on that, you have a very, very strong, massive spirit self, and your ego mind is a horrible match for that spirit self, but you're refusing to give up on letting your spirit go. You won't push it under. You won't cut that connection, but you also don't know how to make that connection good. And the body is the one that takes the toll.
Yeah.
Because it's literally a battle being fought in the ground of your body.
Yeah, and that's what an autoimmune disease literally takes form as the body fighting itself.
Yes.
And so I really want the Akashic records held in the body aspect of this to land deep. I mean, we've spoken so much about how in some ways there's a conflicting message that I just maybe want you to address directly, which is the score is held in the body and it's completely not in the body. And it's the Akashic record, and yet that's outside of you in the spirit. So I would love you to like crystallize and take all of those pieces and make them make sense for anyone who's listening.
Not everybody has access to the same Akashic records. And you can actually see this. If you get on Witch Talk, Spiritual, any sites, you'll see people in a great argument and disagreement around what do the Akashic records actually contain? Who can access them? Level of access, protection. People will argue about all these different things. And what they're not understanding is that the Akashic records is simply the record that is held in your body, literally your DNA. We all trace back to one woman, mitochondrial Eve. And there's 1,000 different tangents that she spreads out in. You carry one of those lines in your genetic lineage, in your epigenetic experiences, that's coded into your body. And we know that you can change epigenetic expression based on the emotional experiences you go through in life. This is why it's possible to develop or heal autoimmune diseases in later life, because the epigenetic expression was changed. Not all the time, but some of the time. So what that shows us is that your body is literally a library. And we know this, like your bones are they have a lot of silica in them. They literally have crystals in them. Crystals carry information. You're literally a walking data chip that is also a sentient being and multiple sentient beings. Your womb has its own nervous system. Your heart has its own nervous system. So you have your own unique body library of yourself on multiple levels, past, epigenetic, like ancestral, as well as your actual physical body. And it's kind of like, it reminds me of the hidden rooms and staircases in Harry Potter, where maybe at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, a person goes and they access a certain room, but that room only shows up once a week at a certain time. The Akashic Records kind of works like that. If you are in a body where you're really not in contact with your spirit, you're going to get a completely different level of access and a completely different exposure. So what you see as the Akashic Records might not line up with somebody else's experience. Both of them are
Because of
true at the
your
same
access to
time.
spirit level.
Yes, exactly. They essentially how much of quantum reality, how much paradox is your mind self capable of holding, that's going to limit your access and your level. But it is all channeled through the body. And so if you have numbness in the body where you can't feel certain parts of your body, you can't access that. And what's so insane, well, it's really not insane at all. I've never gone seeking my past life experiences, but the more body work I do,
to show up,
I remember my past lives, and it's visceral.
Yeah.
Down to the point where, like, I had trauma. I've always had a tight right elbow right here. I was shot as a 22-year-old Polish girl in World War II by a German soldier. And I turned and he was shooting that spray of bullets. But the worst one that I felt hit me right here. I died before hitting the ground. And you can hear the emotion in my voice. It was just a dream, but it was a visceral, like I knew it. And all of a sudden, this whole array of issues on my right arm coming into my heart, that was a part of me that closed in that life. And then I can actually take those feelings, because now I have a story of something for my mind to look at and remember and be like, oh God. And I can feel the emotions associated with it, even if it's from a distant lens. And I can go through the process of doing the digestion of any emotion that comes up with that memory. And that's when that body part opens and lets go. So it's not that the emotion is held in the physical tissues, but it's held in your genetic memory. And how much identity work you've done around your memory emotions.
And from my own personal experience, I'll just add on to that of when you do have this wonderful dance with identity and what it means and what it doesn't mean, you'll start to actually learn the history of this earth as well. That will be gifted to you.
It really will, and some other things, but
none of this is true.
Go ahead. Yes! Also, if you are, being, mostly European / white, I've always carried so much ancestral shame around, like, how do I relate to other nationalities, and how can I actually have a good experience on Earth when my existence is disgusting? And the more you do body work, you cannot do body work without also unpacking and doing the ancestral work and the work around racism and around sexism and all these big issues that keep us apart. It just naturally comes up at its own pace. And it's not something you have to force. It's like reading a good storybook, what needs to come up will come up.
Curiosity of who you be could delight and entertain you for the rest of your life. And that's why we have
Literally.
Netflix. And that's why we have Disney and Prime. So that you don't ever find out how fascinating you are as a person. But going back to paradox, once you start to envelop and unfold your history and the way in which you've moved through what we say is time, you have to be able to hold the paradox of the killer and the killed, the victim and the violator, the hunted and the witch. You have to be very aware that you are both, and you have been
that you've
more
played
than
every
once.
role.
You've played every role. And the choice now, do you want to make meaning out of that? Or do you want the meaning to go? And sometimes it's both. And sometimes it's one. And sometimes it's neither. And it's like meaning dissolves in this. And as you play around with like,
It
what does
does.
this mean? Who am
And
I?
it becomes, I think for me, the greatest motivation behind that is can the most frightening aspects of life in the modern world that we are facing, where every society, every century has felt they're on the brink of collapse. And we certainly feel that now. And it's not to discredit any of the, ecological issues or anything that's happening. It really is not to make light of it at all. And that is the paradox of it. But can you come into a place in your body where, because your body is the Akashic records and because your body is the 3D bridge between second dimension and fourth dimension, who cannot touch each other and cannot interrelate except through the three-dimensional physical form of the body. Can you enter into that relationship with the three of yourselves and make it more and more harmonious, not necessarily out of strife and necessity, and it's okay if you start there, but the further you continue, can it become, when you see enough of yourself and you remember, literally remember, put back together from that Akashic Records knowledge in your body, you start to remember who you are, and you realize that your capacity is so tremendous.
Yeah.
And when you realize that on an embodied level, it strips the fear out of being. And
Mhm.
it's like you can breathe for the first time. And the
You
tension in
go
your
back
jaw lets
in the
go,
water.
and the pressure behind your eyes. That's so wild that you say that, because I teach my course in elements, and the final fifth element is water. We return to water. So that's so crazy. That's so crazy to me that you said that just now.
No, it's not.
Exactly. I mean that it's absolutely mind-bogglingly not in the least. Of course you would know that.
And I wanted to
And
layer one final thing onto the conclusion of this multidimensional transmission of today. It's when you work with the mind, spirit, body, quantum spiral vortex, your face will change, your body will change. And it may not even change in a lasting way. You may just metamorphise in that moment, and I used to really freak a lot of people out when a lot of this, I'm not doing so much past stuff anymore. I'm doing more like future self, which is really cool. I'm much more
yeah,
energetically coded for future holding. But to get there, I had to do a lot of what we call the past. And once you start to do this, you also collapse
yes.
time. You also understand a lot of these things don't even exist anyway, and it's all happening in this one moment. Because if you're in the body, it can't be anywhere
Mm,
else. But anyway, we won't go down that rabbit hole. I just wanted to say,
exactly.
like, I would walk out of one of those memories would research. I'd be making a tea and I'd be like, I mean, like, where am I right now? Like, and I would look around and I always oriented myself with like, what can I see? What am I wearing? How old do I feel? Like, and I would orient myself in
Mhm.
what was my new present. So, and I think that's another way how you don't come into schizophrenia. You're like, okay, orient in the body, orient in the body. Okay,
Yes,
where am I?
yes.
Okay,
And
looking
we go
around.
through
Okay,
we go through a lot of this.
yeah,
Mm,
yeah. So, okay, I'm in this
yeah.
kitchen. It's this
No, it's a
style.
very necessary part of the work.
You start talking out loud. Okay, I'm speaking this language. Okay, do I know my name? No. Do I know where I am? Yes, no. Okay, right. What am I here for? I was making tea in my kitchen. Now I'm making tea in this my kitchen. Okay. And then the thing would come out and you would find out what it is. And I would come back into my body in this reality time point, time space coordinate
Hmm.
that I'm in talking to you in this lifetime where my name is this and I'm, speak like this and et cetera, et cetera. And then I would like land back into the body, like having like this, like body's just going, I just need you to experience this because it was exactly identical and this thing happened and now you can be there and you can release that and it's like now it's known. And I'd come back in and then someone would walk into the kitchen, like my partner or a friend or whatever, and they'd be like, whoa, why do you look like that? And my face would still
Yeah,
be
yeah.
stuck from that time. And I'd be like, depending on who it is and how integrated I was and where I was in time space, I would either tell them or I'd be like, don't worry about, like, I don't know. And I think these things happen and, in a different time we would be institutionalized or we would put on medication or whatever. But it's like, this is a time of history where the earth is truly asking women to remember that immeasurable,
For real.
inestimable power. And it's not by chance that AI is coming at the same time that women are coming back online. And I think it's really fascinating that you're like, is it just all the gods that are just playing a psychological warfare trick on us? I'd never even like considered that or known that. But like when I felt that in my body, I was like, oh my God, how did I
Yeah.
not
And
know that
honestly,
before?
like, that's a rabbit trail I could go down for days. Ultimately, it doesn't matter.
It
It really
doesn't.
doesn't matter. It doesn't. But I
So
do want
what
to say, like,
does?
on that is what does matter. I love that saying, and I come back to it over and over. The before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water.
Yeah. Yeah.
The more that your mind learns to accept your spirit through the animal of your 3D body, you will realize and have experiences more and more where the mind self can be toxic and dangerous. We're well aware of that. In excess, it can create death. And in excess, spirit self will lead you to death because spirit has no fear of death. It's beyond death.
Hmm.
So there needs to be a balance, and that balance is the body. It is this thing that has been reviled by every religion, and especially women's bodies. But the body, especially the biologically female body, is the limit and the litmus test for civilization, for existence.
Hmm.
If women's bodies cannot be sustained and healthy, well, look at the state of the earth right now, and how many of us are really healthy and happy. They mirror each other exactly.
We could talk for years. We could talk for days. We could talk for lifetimes and still not like come to the bottom of your knowledge. So I'm so grateful that you have accepted to have this conversation with me. I will be deeply changed for knowing you. So thank you for the work that you do in the world. Thank you for actually showing people what is possible. And I think you play with possibility and truth in such a way that is accessible and digestible. So thank you so much for being such an amazing beacon of light. I'm so grateful. I'm truly, truly grateful for this conversation and for you. So thank you. Thank you for coming today. Please tell people, how can they find you? How can they connect with you? How can they work with you deeper if they were tickled and piqued in their interest today?
So, yeah, no, thank you so much. And it's such a joy to be at a point where I can have this conversation,
Mm.
just personally. But my primary platform is my Instagram platform, Layla.Morelock. I host a 6-month class, Persephone style, 6 months on, 6 months off. I host that once a year, and it really is intended to be a full tri-body rebirth where we go down into that spiral and then we come back up, all 3 bodies, all 3 self-supported. And it's mostly through the lens of dance and freestyle dance and somatic body work. So that's really, it is a lot of fun. The students I've had have been absolutely wonderful, absolutely amazing. Just watching them connect to spirit for the first time, let spirit start changing and healing their body. Like the identity shifts, the ego shifts, changing the way that they relate to themselves, to their physical beauty, the physical body changes, changing how they relate to their families, to trauma, to their own identity is just gorgeous. So that's like the big course. And I will be teaching that. I'll be opening that again next September. I may open it sooner, but for sure next September 2027. And in the meantime, I do multiple smaller workshops. I'm really leaning into the spirit side of this right now, as that's, I feel like, the body that people are the most maybe not clear on. We tend to just push it out into the world of abstract spirituality or religion, and it's kind of like a I can take it or leave it type of thing. So I've been doing a lot of work with that lately. And I have workshops that I host throughout the year for that type of thing.
Amazing. This has been amazing. Is there anything that you want to just encapsulate this conversation with and leave everyone with one bite-sized morsel to go away with?
That while we can go into the identity stuff and the spirit stuff all day long, it really is the body and your desire for a healthy body or your own beauty. It is your own vanity and your own desire for your own beauty and to feel good. It is your own desire that will lead you back home.
Mm.
And the things possible are really in the realm of magic. I I'm talking about looking in the mirror and seeing somebody different, because the subtle energy flow, the expressions have changed so much that it actually changes your bones. And, I've completely healed my scoliosis. No, I've completely healed my endometriosis, and I have mostly corrected my scoliosis. I no longer have joint pain when I walk. I no longer have inflammation. I no longer have chronic migraines or tension headaches. I've completely rehabbed the shoulder issues that I had all my life. Just like I literally, it would take me half an hour to go through the litany of physical and inner changes and illness changes that have taken my place in my body. I'm significantly healthier and more attractive exponentially to myself, and it shows physically as well at the age of 33 than I was in my early 20s. And I really need to stress this point. Women are so energetically powerful. We're shapeshifters. I'm so serious. You can completely morph and change your shape. I never had hips because of all the sexual trauma. I didn't really develop hips. I wore my brother's jeans well into my teens. I developed my hips and the hourglass figure that I always found beautiful and wanted to become and thought I would magically blossom into when I hit puberty, and that never happened. I developed that in my late 20s and early 30s because of the emotional work. So that's all really possible. And I wish that every woman could see that possibility for themselves, that your desire for beauty, that your desire to dance, that your desire for these Venusian connected, lush experiences, they are your liberation. They are your liberation. And if your mind self, your ego, masculine self is triggered by that in any capacity, don't you
Go there.
owe it to yourself. Don't you owe it to yourself to be a good man for yourself? How can you be angry at the men in the world if you're not being any better towards your body than they are? You want a boyfriend, a husband, to be a provider, to be good, to praise your beauty, to make you feel seen and held and cherished and nurtured, and to intimately know how to make you feel pleasure and enjoy you, and you're waiting to be seen through your true love's eyes, and you're really waiting for your mind self to be able to hold your spirit in your body in real time on that level.
My God, you're going to set us off for another hour. Layla.
That's possible. That's it. I'm done. That's possible.
Tune in for part 2, 3,
You can have
10,
that. You can
and
do
20.
that.
Layla, thank you so much. And we will have to repeat this over and over times in the future to come to get anywhere near the level of wisdom that you have. So thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
This episode of Becoming Flame is brought to you by Phoenix. Phoenix is a ritual luxury house devoted to erotic feminine embodiment. We create alchemical intimacy oils and functional fragrances infused with spagyric botanicals designed to soften the nervous system, open the body, and awaken life force vitality. Our formulations are crafted as tools of self-initiation. They are not cosmetic. They are not decorative. They are designed to be felt. They are designed to shift. Each oil facilitates a cellular shift into relaxation and receptivity, activating and opening up an archetypal femininity that your body knows and is yearning to step into. These oils allow the body to open safely into sensual intelligence, magnetism, and creative power. They open the libido and open creative sexual energy. When the body is safe, it softens. When it softens, it receives. When it receives, it creates. And when it creates, the entire world shifts. We believe that women who sit deeply in their bodies, in their erotic intelligence and sovereignty, become powerful creators of their lives and the environments around them. Our products are initiations into that coherence. Luxury in experience, devotional in use, transformational in effect. Get yours now at phoenix.com. That's PHENIX.com. xx.com.